Tomorrow night, it's time to sample the slow pace of French country living.
Don't kill it, darling. They were Buddhists. I could come back as one of those.
Do what comes naturally and blend in with the locals. Eddie and Patsy spend an absolutely fabulous week in Provence. Tomorrow at 9:35 on BBC One. It's carnival time at Lapland's. With a chance to be a hero. And the yellowcoats are running wild.
What do you stop for? It happens to be very tiring.
Heidi High reaches new frontiers. Friday night at 8 on BBC One.
The Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud is the star car on BBC Two shortly as owners, past, present and famous, pay homage. Here on BBC One, the secrets behind the spectacular outdoor concerts of Jean-Michel Jarre are revealed in half an hour. And that's after the programme that always gets the answers.
Tonight on Here and Now with Sue Lawley.
The ceasefire's over and peace is in peril, but the IRA's political wing is still making money in America.
Anyone who gives money to Sinn Féin, in my view, is contributing to the letting of blood.
So who's given Gerry Adams the cash and where does it go? Also, after 30 years as a bag lady on London streets, she's at Oxford, working for her doctorate.
It's a powerful message, isn't it? Anyone can do it if they want to do it.
The extraordinary story of Chris Kitch. And a storm in our teacups.
It's all about convenience, but it's not bad tea.
How the drawstring and the pyramid are the new weapons in a multi-million-pound battle to brew the best cuppa.
Sharp stories, blunt questions. With Sue Lawley, Mark Easton, Anastasia Cook, Shonka Guha, Susan Ellicott, and John Walters.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. Sunday was St. Patrick's Day, celebrated as enthusiastically in parts of America as in Ireland itself. Gerry Adams, the leader of the IRA's political wing, led the march in New York, where, although on this visit he was banned from fundraising, his cause has received millions of dollars in the past. In fact, his party, Sinn Féin, is 4 times richer than any other in Ulster. We've been talking to American celebrities who've donated cash, and we've been on the trail of the money to find out how it's spent.
The IRA is back bombing Britain. But in America, its political wing is still free to raise money for the cause, and with the US administration's blessing.
We grossed $1.3 million since we were given permission to fundraise. We fulfilled all the necessary transparent regulations. People here are very satisfied, and in fact the White House has commended us.
Anyone who gives money to Sinn Féin, in my view, is contributing to the letting of blood, and I think it's reprehensible.
This weekend, St. Patrick's Day saw Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams striding down New York's Fifth Avenue, accepting the cheers of the crowds. Despite the IRA's return to bombing, he was granted a US visa on the understanding that, unlike previous visits, he wouldn't use the trip to raise funds.
But away from Gerry Adams and away from the razzle-a-tires of the St. Patrick's Day parade, Sinn Féin's dollar-raising machine continues to grind. They've been spectacularly successful. More than $1 million has poured in already, making them the richest party in Northern Ireland by far.
It was this time last year, with the IRA ceasefire then 6 months old, that President Clinton agreed to allow Sinn Féin to fundraise in America. Money flooded in, channeled through an office here in the heart of Washington. Friends of Sinn Féin is still open for business today.
And just make the check out to Friends of Sinn Féin.
Jerry Adams' supporters are busy collecting funds, even if he wants to downplay the whole subject.
Bye-bye.
It isn't an issue on this visit or indeed at this time.
Could it not be that the American administration accepts the British view that money raised by Sinn Féin directly or perhaps indirectly supports IRA terrorism?
No, not at all, and I think once again you make the awful mistake of going off into eccentric, silly distractions. Go and check with our accountants.
I decided to do just that. The trail began in Washington on the 7th floor of an unprepossessing Department of Justice building. As an officially registered organization, Friends of Sinn Féin must submit detailed accounts here every 6 months. They make fascinating reading.
Here we can see how much money Sinn Féin say they raised in America in the first 6 months or so of operations. $1,117,081.12. But that's not all that this computer will allow us to see. It's also got a list of everyone who's donated more than $50 to Friends of Sinn Féin. And the list reads like a who's who of the rich and famous.
For instance, Hollywood star Angelica Houston has donated $500. TV presenter Michael Moore has given $125. Bianca Jagger attended a $200 a plate gala dinner, and Emmy-winning actress Fionnuala Flanagan has hosted a Hollywood fundraiser which netted thousands for Sinn Féin. Next stop, New York, where some of the most glittering money-raising events were held. I tracked down Bianca Jagger, who believes John Major should take much of the blame for the IRA's return to violence. But what about Sinn Féin? With the bombers now operating and killing people, would you go to a gala for Sinn Féin?
I will probably not do that. I don't think that at present I will attend a Friends of Sinn Féin gathering.
Film star Fionnuala Flanagan wasn't in town, but I called her at her home in LA.
Are you concerned now that the ceasefire is over that any of the money that you raised or you yourself gave might end up supporting terrorism?
No, not at all, because I have assurances from Sinn Féin, whose books were very carefully scrutinized here in America by the American government. So I am confident that that is what it is being used for, since it is the American government that is the watchdog over those funds.
Next, I dialed up Angelica Houston in Hollywood.
Would you continue to support financially Friends of Sinn Féin now that the ceasefire is over?
Under the present circumstances, while there is no longer a ceasefire, I cannot contribute to any party which I feel might be aligned with terrorist activities.
The man who led this year's St. Patrick's Parade in New York is one of America's most influential businessmen, William Flynn. He's given money to all major political parties in Northern Ireland to try and further the peace process, as the London bombing campaign changed his attitude.
Now, the group that did then took responsibility was the Irish Republican Army. Sinn Féin is the political wing of the Irish Republican Party. I don't think we ought to be funding any group that's connected with an organization that has returned to a violent approach.
Gentlemen, I give you a man of sacrifice and a man of peace, Jerry Adams.
Although he was shunned by the White House on his trip last weekend, Jerry Adams was given a hero's welcome almost everywhere else he went. While the Sinn Féin leader dined with town dignitaries at a nearby bar in Scranton, Pennsylvania, St. Patrick's Day revelers told me that the IRA's return to violence changed nothing for them.
God bless the IRA.
Well, if I had the money, I would send it to Northern Ireland.
You would?
Yes, I would.
Wouldn't you be worried that it might end up supporting terrorism over there?
Well, chance has to change.
Would you be confident that money you gave to Sinn Féin went on entirely peaceful and legitimate causes?
Not at all, but I donate and I accept where the money goes is where it goes.
Larry Downs is in charge of Sinn Féin's financial affairs in the US. He told me that despite Jerry Adams' agreements not to fundraise, his visit coincided with hundreds of dollars arriving in the mail, and some of that money is likely to be sent to Ireland.
The primary focus of the Friends of Sinn Féin is here in the United States. To the extent that we have excess funds, we have in the past sent them over, and substantial amounts. And indeed, we would envision that that will happen again in the future.
In fact, the US government's records on Sinn Féin's activities show that from the $1 million they've raised, more than $500,000 has already been transferred to a bank account in Dublin. Of that, about $330,000 is listed as having gone on general office expenses, $12,000 on phone bills, $24,000 on computers, $32,000 on office restoration. So the question is whether the US authorities are able to keep track of the money once it leaves the country.
The U.S. Treasury Department only certifies that that money has been raised and has been transferred abroad, but they don't monitor the final disposition of those funds.
So once the money leaves American shores, it appears the administration doesn't really have any idea where it ends up.
No, the truth, and it's the awful truth, is the U.S. government has very little capability to do it and very little interest in pursuing it.
Our trail then leads to Dublin. Here, political parties are under no obligation to publish any details of their spending. Sinn Féin told me that while they do produce audited accounts, they were confidential. So the only clue as to where the money goes is what Sinn Féin tells the American authorities.
According to Sinn Féin, the bulk of the money sent to Ireland was spent here at their Dublin HQ. $250,000 was apparently spent on basic office running costs, heating, lighting, wages and so on. But those are just the kind of bills Sinn Féin would have had to pay, dollars or no dollars. So even if the American money did end up here, what happened to the money they saved as a result?
The United States administration can certainly keep an eye on the money that is spent in the Washington and New York offices of Sinn Féin. What happens to the money that comes across into the bank account in Ireland is much more difficult to control. But even if that money is used for legitimate purposes, it frees up the traditional IRA money, which goes to the military wing and helps to keep violence going.
Can you guarantee then that a 1 cent of $1 that you collect here, or that your party collects here, ends up in any way giving succor to the IRA?
Mark, I've already told you that I guarantee that. Now, are we going to go over repetitively this issue? I've dealt with the question. Let's move on and discuss other matters.
Your accounts in Ireland, as you know, are confidential. So is the reality that in the end, we just have to trust you that the money is being used legitimately?
You don't have to trust me at all. I haven't asked you to give me money. And I've already told you, and I will tell you again, that our accounting, whether in Ireland or in the USA, is transparent.
Irish Americans are often accused of having a romantic view about Northern Ireland politics. Certainly when it comes to supporting Sinn Féin, despite the party's insistence that it's totally open about its finances, there's no way donors can find out what happens to their dollars other than by accepting the word of the IRA's political wing.
Now, you may have passed her shuffling along the street, lying in the subway, or hunting in the rubbish bin. But have you ever thought what goes on inside the mind of the bag lady? Well, tonight we have the remarkable story of a woman who, after 30 years of drugs, drink, prostitution and homelessness, abandoned her life on the streets to become an Oxford scholar. The bag lady, a pathetic but familiar figure on our city streets, often drugged, usually drunk, always lousy.
Over 32 years on the streets is a long time to be saturated with the dirt of the streets. And streets are dirty places. They're messy places. Messy things happen on the streets. And on the streets of my life, messy things happened.
Today, Chris Kitch is 57 and clean of drink, drugs and lice. It's been a long climb up from the depths of degradation. Sometimes she's fallen back into the hell she called home. Would you on occasions have been the sort of pile of rags that we see in underground tunnels? Somebody sitting there, you're not quite sure whether it's human or not.
Yeah, I was.
What goes on under those rags?
It's an extremely vulnerable position to be in. So the defence is to be almost to lose yourself within the mess. And people won't want to know you because you smell, you're dirty. You feel that you're an outcast, an outlaw. Every message you get from people passing by to the police is either pity, anger, abuse. It's like you are the scum of the earth, or it was at that time. Although I was very angry, I also was extremely sensitive. And sometimes I just died. It was unbearable. Don't they know I'm human, you know?
9 years ago, that anger finally erupted, and Chris Kitch, bag lady of Piccadilly, determined to become, in her words, a writer and a scholar. A woman who for decades had abused her body and her mind decided she would fulfill a childhood dream. And she's succeeding. Today, armed with a BA Honours from London, she's a student here in Oxford, where she's reading for her MA. The outsider has become part of the establishment.
The whole thing began from being illegitimate, and this stigma was used against me. I heard my stepfather and my mother arguing. I was always, "You're ugly bastard." This is the way he talked about me to my mother. The most powerful image was when my brother and sister were sitting on my mother's knee, and I went to be included. I didn't know my need to be with my mother was more powerful than my fear of my stepfather, and he was in the scullery. And the next thing I knew, I had been smashed across the floor, across the room, and he roared the words at me, "She's the mother of my children, you bastard."
Brought up in the slums of Bradford, Chris left grammar school at 16 and sank swiftly into a life of drink and prostitution. By the early 60s, she was swallowing Purple Hearts and living on the streets or in public lavatories.
For over 20 years, this was my life. Piccadilly was like a village, and the place where I spent most time was the toilets. Piccadilly Subway 4. Everything was controlled by the need to get drugs. I lost a lot of friends here. Most of these people I'm talking about are dead. I feel a real sorrow about it all. And yet, it was my home for all those years. All you identify with is the dirt, the refuge, rubbish, that which is no longer of any use. It's been thrown out. It's just a lot of black bags, but it touches something in me that is still painful. Because I felt so bad about myself, the only place it was okay to look in was rubbish. Not where the lights were and the people who smelled nice and clean. Well, I know different now, you know.
Even then, Chris knew she was capable of better, despite what she did to stay alive.
Prostitution is a byproduct of the drunkenness.
So what kind of man would come up and proposition your kind of woman?
Well, you answer that question. I can't.
Do you remember what they looked like? What kind of people?
They look like men look like. Some are very well spoken, well dressed. Some are very cruel look about them. And if you were caught by the police in any of these encounters, the men were always treated with great respect. And do you know what this woman is? You know, so you're always the bad person.
Chris Kitch lives in a convent these days, an irony that doesn't escape her. In giving her a home, the nuns have made her legitimate. It's as if, says Chris, she's been welcomed to the human race at last. What was the lowest point of your life on the street, or were there so many, too many to mention?
I think the most hurtful experience was when I was dragged out of a squat by a gang of 12-year-old children in Waterloo and told that I smelled. It just sounds so what, you know, I did smell. But it was horrible. These were children telling me, and then I thought, my God, what have I become? But gradually, you know, the emptiness of it all and the recognition that I was getting older, I didn't have the same energy, and not only that, I hadn't gone to college and I hadn't done any writing.
In December 1993, 8 years after she quit the streets, Chris became a Bachelor of Arts. For the first time, she says, she knew the meaning of self-esteem. But the dream was only just beginning. Next, it's to be Dr. Kitch. How far away is that person that you were? Do you feel, I can't even believe that that was really me, or is that person just there and you can touch her?
No, I love that person. And that's the person that suffered so much to enable me to become who I am and where I am today.
But do you have to pinch yourself these days, you know, to believe that you are who you are today?
No, I don't. No. I laugh about it. I laugh when people ask me to speak at colleges or places. I think this is crazy. They wouldn't have asked me if I was sitting in that doorway stinking and lice running off my hair, you know. And they're asking me now. And I laugh at the comparison. And it's quite farcical, really, because I'm still Chris.
A Chris who can still feel seduced by the street, but whose new learning has given her the strength to resist.
I'm proud that I'm developing my intellectual capabilities, because that means that I will be able to give something of value. And I've given enough shoddiness. And of course, you know, from the streets to Oxford, you know, it's a powerful message, isn't it? Anyone can do it if they want to do it.
The life and times of Chris Kitch. Now, you probably won't be aware of this, but a tea war is brewing. It's going to be backed with a multi-million-pound advertising campaign beginning next month. The battle will be fought out between our two biggest brands, Tetley's and PG Tips. In the search for a better cuppa, scientists have been pulling strings and adapting the laws of thermodynamics, and they've come up with two revolutionary new tea bags. So don't put the kettle on just yet. All is about to be explained.
The Waldorf Hotel in London. It's time for a cha-cha-cha and a cup of cha at the country's best-known tea dance. I like a nice cup of tea, and I'm not alone in that. Did you know that 72% of the people living in Great Britain drink tea every day? About 4 cups on average. That's about 187 million cups of tea. That would fill 25 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's a lot of tea. Fred and Louisa have been coming here every week for years. They like the old style of dancing and the traditional way with tea.
It's all technicalities, isn't it now? Nobody knows how to use a tea strainer and a leaf tea.
When I was a lad, there was nothing but tea leaves. You had to use a strainer and you got a mouthful of them. But 43 years ago came the first salvo in the tea wars, the ubiquitous tea bag. Originally, they were square and offered the mess-free brewing of a convenient and quick cuppa. Then 7 years ago, the number 2 in the tea bag business, the Tetley tea folk, devised a round version. They contain a blend of more than 30 teas, and each bag had over 2,000 little perforations. They made monkeys out of Brook Bond, increased sales by 20%, and have been top of the char bag charts ever since. But some tea purists have been telling me that bag means bad.
My argument isn't with the tea bag, whether it's round, square or whatever. It's just against the tea bag per se. I do not like the way tea is today manufactured that goes in the tea bag.
Loose-leaf tea is rolled. Tea bag tea is apparently processed by what's called the cut, tear and curl method, which some say reduces quality. Others defend it.
In fact, it's, if you like, in simple terms, the same tea going in from the same bush, the same estates, but specially broken up into small pieces by the process when it's prepared. So it'll brew a little quicker because you have lots of little bits and there's more surface area, to be rather pedantic, so you get a quicker brew. So it's all about convenience, but it's not bad tea.
But they'll never use a tea bag in the Temple of Tea, the Brahma Tea and Coffee Museum by the Thames in London.
I like a nice cup of tea in the morning.
It celebrates the elixir of the bean and the glory of Rosy Lee.
I've set the breakfast in. Well, my idea of tea is a fourth or a fifth cup of tea.
It welcomes over 25,000 lovers of the leaf each year and recounts how Britain became the largest tea importing nation in the world.
And when it's time for bed, there's a lot to be said for a nice cup of tea.
The museum's particularly popular with the Japanese, who share our love of tea. Are they really taking a leaf out of our book? We decided to expose them to the latest twist in the tea wars, a secret weapon made in Britain, but being tested in Australia.
Tetley drawstring tea bags. Just one squeeze and you're homeward bride. Tetley drawstring. All you make is tea.
I lift it out, and then I go...
Oh, good idea.
Is there a Japanese for non-drip? Like that, we go like that. Or...
Isn't it?
It is clever. For once, our technology impresses the Japs. They know an awful lot about tea here. It's of brokers, and they're about to do a tasting to test the characteristics of hundreds of blends in advance of the next auction. Their opinions influence tea prices round the world. Michael, Dominic, when you're ready.
Next one. Very similar to
Yes, not quite as bright perhaps, but otherwise similar.
that. On again.
We wouldn't make a valuation difference there, would we?
That's got a little more blue.
Is the tea bag death?
No, definitely not. It's a very good quality blend today, and it's very popular. You've got the best of all things. You've got a very convenient way of making tea, but you've got good quality tea with it, and this is why 90% of all tea is consumed in tea bags today.
Soon we'll be spoilt for choice. In an attempt to take out Tetley's drawstring, the lads in the lab at Brookbond have a new ace in their arsenal. It's taken 4 years to develop and could cause a storm in our teacups.
Ain't no drag. Papa's got a brand new bag.
It seems to have come to Jeff's attention that PG Tips have a new invention. A pyramid bag that's frightfully clever, so the tips move around for the best cup ever.
It's cost £25 million to develop, and the new bags go on sale next month. We decided to try some out on our Japanese friends, already reeling from the excitement of the drawstring. Now, this is the new tea bag.
Oh.
It is like a pyramid.
Yes.
The shape is pyramid to let the, I think the water, hot water goes around more easily and keeps it loose and free.
Oh, I see.
You see, so it isn't all pinched up. So that's...
Clever.
Can you ask your friends if they think this is as good as loose tea, the tea leaves? Is this as good, the tea bag?
Yes, they like it.
Oh, they like it?
Yes, they like
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, good. But will the British public? The tea wars are escalating. Tetley and Brookbond will battle it out with new inventions, but some still argue the consumer is the one casualty in the quality war.
The tea is not the same as it used to be. So we have seen, therefore, in your lifetime, my lifetime, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a prostitution of the tea leaf, but it's certainly the creation of a different kind of tea leaf to what it used to be in the past.
The purists may well say, well, you don't get as good a brew. We're finessing, and long may we continue to finesse. It's good for the market, but the fact of the matter is the consumer's voting with her purse.
The tea bag market is worth more than £500 million a year, but there are still many out there who would rather turn over an old leaf.
So you'd never have a tea bag?
I have to be half drugged to have a tea bag. Cha-cha-cha.
Well, I'm rather partial to a loose leaf myself. That's it from Here and Now for this week. We'll be back same time next Wednesday. do join us. Good night.